Creativity, a short and cheerful guide by John Cleese. I bought this book on impulse when I was at the bookshop buying other books. This caught my eye on the shelf and everything about it appealed to me. It's written by John Cleese, a comedian who I admire. It's titled Creativity, which is what I want to learn more about on the Quilling project, and it was described as a short and cheerful guide, which sounded lovely and fun to read. And then the back cover simply reads, "There is a myth that creativity is something you are born with. This isn't the case. Anyone can be creative." This sounded interesting to me because I kind of had heard that creativity is like a muscle that needs stretching and continued use to be strong. So I was keen to know what John Cleese's take would be. And on top of that, it was a very small book at only 100 pages long, so it's a very short and sweet read. So all of these things together made me add it to my collection at the cash register. I got home that afternoon and read the whole thing in one sitting, and it was wonderful. It's informative, insightful, funny, it draws on his experience as a writer, and it's full of useful tips and ways to frame your thinking when it comes to creativity. So allow me to give you a short summary of this book and offer you my thoughts, but then rather than give you a review, I want to offer you two methods that have worked for me during the course of the Quilling journey to help get my creative juices flowing, and hopefully they might be helpful to you. If you don't know who John Cleese is, he's an English writer, actor and comedian who grew to fame as part of the Monty Python group in the 1970s. I especially loved seeing him in Monty Python's Life of Brian.
Hail Caesar!
Hail!
Only one survivor, sir.
Oh!
The Holy Grail.
Your mother was a hamster and your father smelt of elderberries.
Fawlty Towers as Basil Fawlty.
Rosewood, mahogany, teak. Beg your pardon. What would you like your breakfast tray made out of?
Shrek 2 as King Harold.
Fine, pretend there's nothing wrong. La-di-da-di-da-di-da, isn't it all wonderful? Like to know how you can get any worse.
Hello, Harold.
And of course, Harry Potter as Nearly Headless Nick.
I prefer Sir Nicholas, if you don't mind.
So this book is broken into 4 sections: the introduction, the creative mindset, harebrained tortoise mind, and hints and suggestions. In the introduction, John busts some myths about creativity, that it only applies to the arts, that it's something you're born with, and that you can't teach creativity. None of these are true, and John uses the rest of the book to demonstrate why. In the creative mindset chapter, John said how he was surprised when he learned that he was a little bit creative at university in a sketch group. He said it was during the course of writing sketches, the first imaginative thing I was ever conscious of doing, that I realised I could be a bit creative. That is to say, if I wrote something down on a piece of paper and performed it later, I could make people laugh. His first lesson in this chapter was about the power of our unconscious. He said, "If I put the work in before going to bed, I often had a little creative idea overnight." And there was another example of one time when he was working on a script with a friend, John accidentally lost the script. And he was so worried when he couldn't find it that he sat down and rewrote the whole thing from memory.
And then I found the original. And when I compared the two, I discovered that the one that I remembered, in quotes, was actually better written than the first one.
These two examples kind of demonstrate our unconscious works on stuff all the time without us ever being consciously aware of it. And this unconscious of ours is astoundingly powerful. But, as John says, the problem with our unconscious is that it is unconscious. You can't order it about or hit it with a stick. You have to kind of coax it out with all sorts of strange and crafty ways and be clever about interpreting what it does tell you. The third section, harebrained tortoise mind, delves deeper into the idea of the unconscious when he explains the 2 main ways of thinking. The harebrain, which uses reason, logic, deliberate, quick and purposeful thinking, and then the tortoise mind, which moves slowly, less purposefully, more playfully and dreamily, and it's more contemplative. But both are just as intelligent. John Cleese noted a very interesting study on creative and non-creative people in architecture and found 2 distinct differences. Creative people, they know how to play. Creative people also put off making decisions as long as they can, because if you defer a decision, it means you might get new information or new ideas in that time. And John Cleese goes on to describe how to create an environment to allow space and time to play. It needs to be free of interruptions, both internally and externally, in a place that allows you space for a specific period. But within these boundaries, it is sacred. Now you can play. The more you do this, the more your mind settles and the more playful you become, and the more ideas you'll have and your creativity will flourish. When you play, you don't know where a vital prompt may come from, and you need to give your unconscious and your tortoise mind space to allow ideas to bubble up to the surface. When an idea does pop up, you use your harebrain to then assess if it is in fact a good idea, and then you go back and forth between them to finesse your ideas. John Cleese finished this section by saying, tortoise mind, harebrain. They need each other, but keep them separate. The final section of this book was titled Hints and Suggestions for Creativity, drawing on John Cleese's experience as a writer, but that may apply to any field really. I absolutely loved this book. It was a lovely, light-hearted read and just what I needed at the time to help stimulate my thinking and my creativity for this channel. The majority of it is common sense, but John Cleese explains in a fun, funny way with real examples from his experience. And this certainly was a short and cheerful guide to creativity. It was an absolute pleasure to read and great to pick up some wisdom from one of the greats. So to finish, I want to share with you 2 things that have helped me generate ideas and to think in creative ways during this Quilling Quarter journey. And they are constraint and curiosity. So the constraints I set for myself for the Quilling Quarter were, it's a 1-year project, make videos in 4 categories, which are artist interview, book review, how-to and reflections, and upload a new video in one of these 4 categories every 1 to 2 weeks. And then curiosity was being able to explore what was possible within these constraints. And it has led to some pretty incredible things that I never would have predicted. I found that by working within these constraints stimulated other ideas. And the best example I can give you is how, by reviewing 1 book, led to 9 ideas. It started when I reviewed Anne Martin's book, The Art of Quilling Paper Jewellery. It was the book review, one of the constraints I set for myself, and that was where it started. So I made quite a few designs from the book, including these disc earrings. Then Anne Martin saw my video about her book, and it led me to interviewing her. And then I made another pair of earrings, this time using purple and white and silver strips. When I finished them, I sort of thought that they resembled hard candy. And then that made me think of other edible ideas for earrings, and the simple combination of colours made me think of avocados. All I'd have to do was turn the disc shape into a teardrop shape. So I tried out making avocado earrings and I just love them. I made a pair for my friend's birthday and she loves avocados. I think she liked the avocado earrings. And then I made a how-to video showing you how I made them. And then a quilling artist based in Brisbane was inspired to make them. And finally, idea number 10 was that for the Sydney Quillers meeting, the theme for August was edibles. And so I volunteered to host the session where we could either make avocado earrings or an avocado brooch. And it was great fun. So the key here was allowing room for creativity and curiosity within the constraints that I'd set myself for this project and just see where it led. Idea number 10 wouldn't have happened without idea number 1 and all the ideas in between. Creativity really does spur more creativity, but you have to give it space and time. And in my experience, not only do you have to allow space and time, but you have to make space and time, because ideas take time to form and to marinate. This really does tie in with one of my earliest reflection videos, which was titled Constraint is Inspiring. And the key takeaway from this reflection was that constraints actually make you think more creatively. If everything is possible, it's overwhelming and it's kind of too much. But within certain bounds, you figure out interesting ways of working within them. So I made the challenge for myself to create a YouTube channel about quilling and divided it into those 4 segments. And the Avocado Evolution gifted me a book review video for The Art of Quilling Paper Jewellery, an interview with quilling artist and author of that book, Anne Martin, and a how-to video where I showed how to make the avocado earrings. And then beyond the channel, I was able to make a gift for my friend. I inspired another artist to make these earrings, and I hosted an online event with the Sydney Quillers group. That's a pretty incredible evolution. But all of it started because I set myself just an arbitrary task and I let the idea evolve within those certain constraints. So they are my 2 methods for helping me keep fresh and creative ideas: constraint and curiosity. So this might be helpful for you when you're looking for inspiration. Create challenges or constraints to work within and be curious to see where it leads. But as John Cleese says, when you make space and time to work on your ideas, keep your playtime sacred.
The creative ability is almost completely unrelated to IQ. In other words, it doesn't really matter how smart you are intellectually, how the left hemisphere is brilliant, how brilliant your left hemisphere is. It doesn't matter at all. If you don't know how to play, then you will not be creative.
So I'm really interested to know your tips to being creative or staying creative. Do you have tried and tested sources of inspiration? Or is there someone that always inspires you? Or do you have a routine that gets you into the headspace? I'd love it if we could learn from each other, so let us all know in the comments, how do you keep creative? Thank you for watching and take care until next time. Goodbye.